Hey everyone, I wanted to do a short video today after I had a fun game over breakfast this morning that I thought gave a good demonstration of the utility of the Fiendsmith engine within Dark Magician in particular. I know there's been a lot of talk about what kind of engines to tack into Dark Magician, especially with the new support on the horizon, and there's been a lot of excitement for things like Shining Sarcophagus and Azamina and Primite. And while Fiendsmith has been, I think, increasingly popular among some Dark Magician players as an option, there is a lot of reticence and pushback from fans of the archetype because I think there's a perception that, Fiendsmith doesn't have anything to do, thematically or aesthetically with Dark Magician, or Fiendsmith is that icky meta deck and we're playing a soulful pet deck, so we don't want to mix these two things. But I do think there's an argument to be made that Fiendsmith opens the door not just for increasing the ceiling of your Dark Magician deck, but giving you opportunities to outskill and outplay your opponent. And I feel like this duel is a good example of that. So we are stuck going second. I'm playing a Fiendsmith Primite Dark Magician list in Master Duel right now for fun. And we have a handful of Primite and Dark Magician cards, which is pretty good. And we're happy to see two Imperms going second. So let's see what our opponent's doing, and I can walk you through my thought process as the duel played out. So he's playing Fiendsmith too, so we have a little bit of a mirror match here. So immediately I know that I have to consider whether or not to interrupt this play. And there's an argument to be made if you only have one hand trap or one interruption of any kind to save it for whatever the rest of his deck is. I mean, part of the reason he's leading with Fiendsmith is because he wants to exhaust my interruptions, right? However, since I have two interruptions, and they're fairly high impact as far as things go, I feel comfortable using one of these here, because what I don't want to have to deal with on my turn, if I can avoid it, is a Caesar or a Fiendsmith in Paradise setup or anything like that. So he's going to go for the Lure, of course. You can't see it in the replay, but I've toggled off here because I don't want him to know that I have an interruption once a monster hits the field. I want him to feel comfortable going for as greedy of a play as he wants to. So he's going to see I have no toggles and he's going to go Lacrima. And this is where you have to make the choice of, do I burn an interruption here or not? And I'm going to, because as I say, I don't want to deal with Caesar or Fiendsmith in Paradise. Or Desiree. We have one interruption left. What is he playing? So that went really fast, but he normal summoned Effect Veiler to get Carozo to go into Centurion Primera Premise. Shout out to my opponent because that was a really sick play that I did not see coming, but that gave me good information. If he summoned Effect Veiler in that position, it means that he does not have a very strong hand to work with. Because in Centurion, of course, you would use any of your other power spells if you had them, or you would go with a better normal summon, what have you, and you would save the Veiler as an additional interruption on my turn. So I know that he has a weak hand, which means that this search is going to be really important. I'm going to go ahead and imperm this. So we're out of interruptions, now we're kind of hoping that's enough. He has two face-down cards, and I don't know the identity of them. I have, like I say, Primite with a Dark Magician search. What do we draw into? Called by the Grave, which is a good card for dealing with the Fiendsmith cards in his graveyard because he still has Lacrima and Requiem. He can use those on my turn to get to Fiendsmith in Paradise, which will complicate things for my turn. I now have to choose what line to go for because I only have 4 cards in hand, and Called by the Grave is not anything that's going to get me into my engines. I can commit to Primite plays and maybe supplement that, and if everything goes great, I can, pivot into a Fiendsmith line. Or I can go for Dragoon, for example, and I can have that backed up by like a Drill Beam, for example. But I am dealing with the threat of the Fiendsmith in the graveyard, and I'm dealing with the 2 face downs. Instinctually in this situation, I want to go for a Fiendsmith line with Primite stuff backing it up, because that, with the cards that I have in hand, is going to generate the greater number of interruptions for me than a single Dragoon will. Especially with how few cards I would have left. Like, going Dragoon is going to require me to exhaust basically my whole hand, and then I'm likely to have to use his negate during this turn, which means I'm sitting on a 4k beat stick on the next turn, which is not a very strong position. I'm going to try and get into my Fiendsmith line, but I have to deal with those face down cards first. Since we already have the load in hand, I'm going to try and bait out an interaction with my normal summon. This maybe puts him in the mind of thinking that I'm playing Blue Eyes, and he's going to be anxious about the drill beam. So there's a good likelihood that he's going to interrupt this. And he does. But it's not what I was expecting. It's a Phalanx. So I get to resolve my effect, but I'm going to lose the body on field. That's going to hurt our ability to go into Fiendsmith because we've lost a body that we could convert into Moon. So now I have to decide what to do with the search. Now this might seem kind of weird. I'm setting this because I want to be able to activate whatever I've used from my search off of barrel, and I have Illusion of Chaos in hand. So what I want to do at this position is search for Primite Roar, lets me summon Dark Magician, and that body can then be converted later on into a Moon, and I can use Magician Souls to get my second body, and I can pitch the load in my hand for a draw, and that can hopefully bait out whatever his second face down card is, and then once he's fully exhausted his interruptions, I can go full steam ahead into Fiendsmith play. And I've set up Roar and Dark Magician, which means that on his turn, I have a banish in response to whatever he normal summons, which is pretty good. So Load is going to grab the Roar. Testing for Ash Blossom with the Illusion of Chaos, he doesn't respond. So now we Roar for Dark Magician. And in the course of doing this as well, I am telling my opponent a story. The story is, I am playing Primite Dark Magician. I know that I can pivot into Fiendsmith, and in fact that's what I want to do primarily. He doesn't know that. He sees that I'm making Primite plays, and now I'm trying to go for Dark Magician plays. So he is weighting his options based on an incomplete story that I'm telling him. That's something I'm leveraging to my advantage. Souls pitches Dark Magician Girl, which really sells the story that we're playing a heavy Dark Magician list. We're going to send away the Load. Now we draw into Timaeus, and this opens some interesting possibilities. In this game state, I still want to go for Fiendsmith if I can, and I can do it because I can turn my Dark Magician into a Link Spider, and that's going to get me into my Moon and so on. I don't know what he has in hand, and I don't know what he has face down on the field, and at this point I'm more anxious about what he has face down. And there's a lot of options it could be. Popular options, it could be something like a Book of Eclipse, or a Solemn Strike, and the bummer is that both of those options beat everything I can do. If I go for a Fiendsmith line here, he just has to wait until I get two bodies on the field to turn into a Sequence or into a Caesar and book them, and then my turn ends, and I probably lose the duel. If it's a Solemn Strike, he can... if I go for Moon and he strikes it, I have no plays left, right? But because those options beat everything I can do, just like if I were to go for a Dragoon play here, right, I can use Timaeus to send away Souls, activate the effect to go for Dragoon. He Solemn Strikes that, I lose. He can Book of Eclipse before I can use Timaeus' effect to fuse, I lose, because it's not a quick effect. But like I say, it's because those options beat both lines of play, I kind of don't have to, like, it doesn't tell me which line is better. I can more or less ignore those and just accept that if it's one of those things, he had the out and I lose. It could be something like a Solemn Judgment. If it's Solemn Judgment and I go for a Fiendsmith line, I lose, because like I say, he can just negate the summon of the Moon and then that's that. If I go for Dragoon, it beats the Judgment, right? Because Judgment has to negate the summon of a monster, like an inherent summon, as you say, a built-in summon. Timaeus' effect to summon from the hand is not that, so he can't chain Solemn Judgment. Timaeus' effect on the field is not that, so he can't do it. And then once I've got the Dragoon on the field, it's too late for Judgment to do anything, because it can't respond to monster effects. So going for Dragoon line beats a set Solemn Judgment here. It could be a Called by the Grave. That, again, beats the Fiendsmith line, because as soon as I go Moon into Requiem, Tribute Requiem, he calls by the Grave the Requiem, I lose. Dragoon beats it. I can go Timaeus into Souls, Call by the Grave has no interaction there, and there's nothing in my graveyard that, like, I don't have a second Timaeus that he can negate with a Called by the Grave. So Dragoon line is starting to look pretty attractive as far as beating face downs, except that, like I say, I don't want Dragoon, because even if successful, it's not putting me in a position where I am likely to win the duel on the back of the resources that I have at hand. So it's looking like the safer option, even though it's not the one that I want. However, the last option we haven't talked about yet for the face down is Imperm. Infinite Impermanence sort of like Book of Eclipse and Solemn Strike, beats either line that I could go for individually, right? If I get as far as Lacrima, like he did, he can imperm my Lacrima, and then that ends my turn. If I go for a Dragoon line, he can imperm Timaeus, and then that ends the Dragoon line. But if I go Timaeus and he imperms Timaeus, I can pivot into a Fiendsmith line. So I have to evaluate these options, and based on the story I've told him so far, I think that the safest thing to do is to assume that that is an imperm, because I think it is the most likely option, and to go for a Dragoon play, not because I want to summon Dragoon, but because I want him to negate the summon attempt. If I am threatening Dragoon and he has an imperm, he is going to feel very strong pressure to interact with me, and that will make it free for me to go full steam ahead with Fiendsmith. So we're going to go ahead and risk him respecting the play. Sure enough, it's an imperm. He negates that. Now we go Link Spider like we talked about. Moon. Now the added complexity here is that I still have Called by the Grave to interrupt his Fiendsmith play, but that's going to cost me my own Fiendsmith play. So I'm really hoping that he doesn't activate either of those cards as I'm doing this. He respects it. Now we're safe. Now Called by the Grave is online, and we don't care at what point he starts doing his play in the grave. We make our Caesar here. And we make Caesar here because we know that he's on Fiendsmith, and if he ends up getting into something like Attract per turn or Engraver or whatever, I want to be able to check those attempts with Fiendsmith to get over me, because without any other Centurion cards, he's not going to get over the Caesar here. Why did I do that? Load says if you activate its effect to summon a monster from your graveyard or deck, you cannot activate the effects of special summon monsters on the field, which means I've turned off my Caesar. Well, I've established by the fact that I got 2 Caesar that he doesn't have a Nibiru in hand, so I'm not worried about that. However, I know that I have Called by the Grave in my hand, and he doesn't. So by turning off my Caesar, I've communicated to him, hey, you're safe to special summon monsters now. You can go ahead and make a Lacrima play. So I am not going to set my Called by the Grave. I'm going to keep it in my hand so that in my end phase, when he activates Lacrima, I can check it with the Called by. And now I have 2 materials on my Caesar for special summon negates instead of just 1. And I have my Dark Magician on the field, which he cannot beat my Roar by banishing Dark Magician from the grave. So for example, if he has a Bestial or a Called by or something like that, and I try to Roar at targeting Dark Magician, it will resolve without effect. Putting Dark Magician on the field means that my Roar is more likely to be successful if I trigger it, and because I used Roar successfully the last turn, he can't destroy Dark Magician by battle, so I have some battle protection here. He banishes the trap to special summon the Synchro, which is a good play for him. I totally forgot the trap does that, so now I have a level 8 tuner on the field I have to worry about, and I've got a Barrel on the field. Similarly, indestructible by battle. He normal summons, so we trigger our Roar here. And because Roar doesn't target, I can choose either of his monsters to banish. They just have to have less attack points than Dark Magician does. Now, cool perk of the trap card that he just used is it cuts the attack points of the monster that he summoned. So now Primera Primus has less attack points than Dark Magician, which means I can banish it. He grabs the field spell. If you're wondering why Caesar's not negating any of these, Caesar negates monster effects or spell trap card activations that special summon monsters. The face-up effects of the Centurion monsters in the back row are trap effects, and I can't negate trap effects to special summon, just trap card activations. So Caesar in this particular matchup isn't super good, and I probably should have gone Desiree, but like I say, I was thinking too much about the threat of Fiendsmith in his graveyard and went Caesar instead. Now, that's the reason why when he went for his Lacrima play, I used Called by the Grave on Requiem and not on Lacrima. One, if he's only running one copy of Lacrima, getting rid of his kills access to, almost assuredly, to his Fiendsmith engine. But two, it means that while I can't use Requiem on my turn, I can still use my Lacrima, and if I use it in the end phase, I don't have to worry about him destroying Requiem in battle. So I'm able to get the full value from my Fiendsmith engine while cutting him off from his. So we're just going to sit on this Requiem until my turn, at which point Called by the Grave's negation effect will no longer apply. So now we're just going to do some Fiendsmith stuff. Now he has the set Quick Play spell in his back row that I want to deal with, and I need to deal with the Auxilia here. So what I want to do is go for Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel can banish the back row, and it gives me something that I can use to beat over the Auxilia, which in combination with beefed up Desiree should close out the game for me. So we're going to go for a Chaos Angel line. And thankfully, and this is part of where the synergy comes in, Dark Magician in particular is really good at getting out to a full power Chaos Angel when paired with Fiendsmith, because Fiendsmith provides the level 4 light monster, and Dark Magician provides easy, consistent access to dark level 6 monsters. Grab Magician Souls. Magician Souls is going to summon the Dark Magician girl we sent earlier in the duel for a Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel banished the back row. Engraver. And that's it. So I hope if nothing else this gets you thinking about how you can play Dark Magician in a way that maneuvers around your opponent's cards in ways that aren't just reliant on Dark Magician effects and Dark Magician monsters, but also the narrative that you can craft through your play that will open opportunities for you to play around the things that your opponent sets up. And Fiendsmith sets you up to do that in a really ideal way that I think few other supplementary engines do. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of it. Sorry for the YouTube notification during the top of that. This went pretty good, so I'm not going to do a take two. So thanks for watching. Take care.